Is India funding Russia's war in Ukraine? It's a brutal question, and one that has sparked a firestorm of controversy across the globe. Since 2022, India has gone from being a nobody in Russia's oil market to its #1 seaborne customer.
The West, led by the United States, calls it profiteering and bankrolling a war machine. Ukraine calls it a betrayal. But India has fired back, accusing its critics of hypocrisy and defending its actions as a matter of survival for its 1.4 billion people. So, what's the truth? Is this a simple case of a nation choosing profit over principles? Or is it a masterclass in geopolitics in a new, multipolar world? Today, we're cutting through the noise, following the money, and breaking down one of the most complex and consequential stories of our time.
Before we dive into the numbers and the politics, a quick request. We're about to unravel a story that affects global security, your wallet, and the future of international relations. If you believe in journalism that tackles these tough, essential questions, please take a second right now to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to understand this issue, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Your support is what allows us to make these deep dives. Thank you. Now, let's get started.
To understand what happened, you have to see the before and after. Before February 2022, India's energy map was stable. Its oil came almost entirely from the Middle East. Russia was a footnote, accounting for less than 2% of its imports. Then, everything changed. After the invasion of Ukraine, as Western nations sanctioned and shunned Russian energy, a fire sale began, and India stepped in big time. The numbers are staggering. India's imports of Russian crude exploded, with Russia quickly becoming its single largest supplier. The reason was simple: a massive discount. With its usual customers gone, Moscow was desperate to sell, and India was eager to buy. But this wasn't a static deal. As Russia found stable new markets in India and China, it regained its pricing power. That huge discount began to shrink, signaling a shift from a short-term bargain hunt to a long-term strategic energy partnership. So, where does all that money go? This is where the accusation of funding the war gets its teeth. Russia's federal budget is critically dependent on oil and gas. This income stream consistently makes up 30 to 40% of all government revenue. It is the financial pillar of the Russian state. When the West imposed sanctions, the goal was to shatter that pillar and trigger a financial crisis. But the sheer volume of sales to India and China acted as a fiscal shock absorber, preventing a catastrophic collapse of the Kremlin's budget.
And this brings us to the principle of fungibility. While you can't trace a specific dollar from an Indian oil purchase to a specific bullet fired in Ukraine, it doesn't matter. All that revenue goes into one giant pot, the federal budget. And it's from that pot that Russia has funded a massive surge in military spending. Since the invasion, allocations for national defense and security have skyrocketed, now consuming about a third of the government's total expenditure. The oil revenue, therefore, directly enables the financial capacity of the Russian state to wage its war. This direct link between India's purchases and Russia's war chest has led to furious condemnation. In the United States, officials have been blunt and brutal. Former White House trade advisor Peter Navarro accused India of acting as an oil money laundromat, buying cheap Russian crude, refining it, and then selling the product to the world, effectively washing the oil of its origin. He even coined a term for the conflict, Modi's War, placing the responsibility for the bloodshed directly on India's leadership. And this wasn't just talk. The U.S. backed it up with action, imposing a crippling 50% total tariff on a wide range of Indian exports, turning a diplomatic dispute into a full-blown economic conflict.
From Kyiv, the criticism is less about economics and more about morality and survival. Ukrainian officials have made direct emotional appeals. Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba rejected the idea of neutrality, stating that, in the face of mass war crimes, pretending to be neutral equals taking Russia's side. For Ukraine, every barrel of oil India buys is seen as a direct contribution to the violence being inflicted upon its people, linking commercial transactions in Mumbai to civilian casualties in Kyiv.
Faced with this intense pressure, New Delhi has mounted a robust, multi-pronged defense. The first pillar is national interest. Indian officials argue that for a nation of 1.4 billion people that imports over 85% of its oil, securing affordable energy isn't a choice, it's a vital national compulsion. Their primary duty, they say, is to protect their own citizens from crippling inflation.
But India's most powerful argument is the accusation of Western hypocrisy. New Delhi points out that the very nations criticizing it are still doing billions of dollars in business with Moscow. In 2024, the EU's trade with Russia was worth over 67 billion euros, and it remains the largest buyer of Russian liquefied natural gas. The US continues to import Russian uranium for its nuclear industry and other critical materials. India argues it's being unfairly singled out when others, including NATO allies, are doing the same.
Finally, India makes a bold claim. Its actions actually help the world. By buying up the Russian oil shunned by the West, India and China prevented a massive supply shock. Without them, Russia's 10% of global oil production would have vanished from the market, potentially sending prices soaring to catastrophic levels of $150 or even $200 a barrel. In this view, India wasn't a war profiteer, it was a global market stabilizer, saving everyone, including its critics, from rampant inflation.
So after hearing all sides, what's the verdict? The truth, as it often is, lies in the gray area. Consequentially, yes, by providing Russia with a vital economic lifeline, India's purchases are an indispensable part of the ecosystem that sustains Russia's war effort. The link is indirect, but it is undeniable. But was it intentional? No. India's primary motive is its own economic security, consistent with its long-standing foreign policy of strategic autonomy. It's acting not as a Russian ally, but as a pro-India actor.
And perhaps the biggest tell is who isn't facing the same heat. China is the single largest buyer of Russian oil, yet it hasn't been hit with the same punitive tariffs as India. Why the discrepancy? It's a cold calculation of geopolitical leverage. A full-blown tariff war with Beijing is simply too risky for the US economy. This selective pressure reveals that the dispute is less about a universal moral principle and more about power politics. The oil trade is the battlefield, but the real struggle is over India's place in a new world order and its refusal to be a junior partner in anyone's camp.
In the end, the story of India's Russian oil trade isn't just about blood and barrels. It's a story about a world in transition, where the lines between right and wrong are blurred by national interest, and where emerging powers are boldly carving out their own paths. India's actions are simultaneously a financial lifeline for Moscow's war, a pragmatic move for its own stability, and a defiant declaration of independence on the world stage. It's a complex, uncomfortable reality.
What do you think? Is India's position justified, or is it a moral failure? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this analysis valuable, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you never miss a deep dive. Thanks for watching.